Thanks for coming back, Adolfo. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What do you have coming up for all of the Deadites in Louisville?
We're coming back to Louisville. This is our second year that we're doing Louisville, and we've got kind of a really cool who's who sort of guest list with Linda Blair from The Exorcist kind of rounding out at the top. We've got Tony Todd, who's also doing his Candyman costume photo op that we did in Atlanta last year that went over great. Ernie Hudson is doing a similar Ghostbusters-themed costume photo op. We're doing a reunion for the movie The Crow with quite a few members from the cast. Got a couple of our, typical wrestling guests, and Kurt Angle, Jerry the King Lawler, a few of the regulars, Sid Haig, Bill Moseley, Kane Hodder. So, it's definitely a Days of the Dead show. A little bit of the world of wrestling, a little bit of the world of horror. Some people that they typically always expect to see, and a couple of new things thrown in for good measure.
Well, and I've got to ask, is there such a thing as a typical Days of the Dead guest at this point? I mean, you've mingled in musicians, you've mingled in wrestlers, you've got authors showing up, you've got voice actors showing up. At this point, you're saying a typical Days of the Dead guest just means somebody who's done something cool, right?
Yeah. I guess when you put it that way, I guess you're right. But yeah. I mean, a typical Days of the Dead guest is just somebody that we grew up enjoying. Somebody that we grew up, like the our demographic we see, was born sometime in the 70s or early 80s and grew up watching, horror movies and the best era of wrestling and Saturday morning cartoons and, loud heavy metal music. That's the Days of the Dead fan base, and that's, the guests that appeal to that, I would say, would be, if you could call any guest a typical Days of the Dead guest. But, you're right. It's somebody that has done something cool, and I think Alan Oppenheimer's done a lot of cool things. So we're ready to go ahead and induct him into our show. Just bring him into our crazy family.
Now, after Louisville, you're still not done for the year. You've got one more show coming out in Chicago for November. Is that right? Yeah, end of November. And you've already started announcing some guests, and there's one I've got to ask you about. How did you get Daphne Zuniga? Oh, our friend Rick Henriquez is actually representing her now. I believe it's going to be her second show. She's doing Monster Mania this next weekend, and Days of the Dead will be her second show. But Rick's somebody that we've been working heavily over the last couple of years. He helped us put together the Stranger Things reunion in Atlanta. He's the guy that helped us bring in the Shining Twins to a couple of our shows, and he has done the Karate Kid guests and a couple of those. I mean, he's great. He's one of the most hardworking talent managers out there now, and definitely somebody whose stock has been quickly on the rise over the last couple of years. And he's very professional, and he's always bringing in some fresh new blood to the convention scene. So we got a couple of other guests on his client list that people haven't seen in too many other places. He's digging up some fresh faces for us for Chicago, and I think everybody's going to be excited once we start announcing them. Awesome. Anybody you care to let our listeners know about now? Unfortunately, I can't, just because they're not really signed yet. Yeah, they can get some try. I get it. Yeah, but he's in the they'll definitely know soon. I mean, after Louisville, we're going to be dropping them fast and furious. So they won't stay secret for long. Excellent. Well, you have to ask. Hit me. No. I mean, I'm just saying. I have to ask that. Okay. Yeah, I don't blame you, because I'm having a hard time sitting on them. So I definitely think people are going to love it.
I couldn't do that. You know, as soon as I had an inkling that I'd have a guest like that, I'd be telling everybody. I have no
I'm
ability
kind of
to do.
superstitious though too, so I think that keeps me in check because I'm kind of like the guy that's like, I get superstitious that if I talk about it before it's time, like something's gonna go wrong and then I'm gonna look silly. So, you know, maybe like if I have that sort of need, I'll tell Carrie, my fiance,
There you go.
and then you know, and then that's it. It kind of just stays with us because I have this like weird like feeling like anytime I put something in the air that's not 100%, you know, something will come back and mess it up for us.
See, I have no fear of looking silly. I'm pretty much used to that 24/7.